a country villa where many rich people gathered. The people in the villa were having a nice time and relaxing to the fullest. One man in the courtyard of the villa was passing by the swimming pool. Suddenly, he noticed something. The man crouched down near the pool and began to gaze. At that moment, someone grabbed the man by the collar and pulled him straight into the pool. Then, many people emerged from the pool. The commander told everyone to get out of the water and take their positions. A bald man was sitting and resting nearby. He noticed the oddities going on and immediately grabbed his weapon, telling everyone to show themselves immediately. However, the bald man was eliminated rather quickly. The rest of the bandits reacted lightning fast, grabbing their weapons and preparing to defend themselves from the enemy's attack. As soon as they ran out of the villa, a light and noise grenade flew towards them. Covering the bandit as a shield, the Special Forces members rushed forward. They had the bandits in their sights, and they were not organized. However, one of the bandits had taken cover on the other side of the villa. He did not go into a frontal attack, but came from the rear and tried to attack the Special Forces. The man failed, as the Special Forces commander ran up to him and deftly knocked him out. He twisted the man's arm and then easily eliminated him. The perimeter was cleared, so he ordered the snipers to take up their positions. The man was the senior instructor of a special unit, Mu Ye. The remaining bandits took refuge in the villa, but because of this, they found themselves trapped and their escape routes cut off. Therefore, one by one, the Special Forces eliminated the gangsters. 10 minutes later, a message was received that the main target had been eliminated. The man informed the others that a helicopter with reinforcements would arrive in 30 minutes. The captain sat down and rested at the villa. Just then, a subordinate ran up to the captain with a bottle of wine in his hands. He asked the captain if he wanted to drink some expensive wine. Mu Ye asked the others to be patient, as they had to wait for the helicopter. However, one of his subordinates believed that the reinforcements on the helicopter would drink everything that was there. One of the subordinates asked if anyone had found a game console. Another subordinate thought that it was time for the man to grow up and stop playing games. Someone was happy to have found a beautiful gold lighter. Mu Ye called them a bunch of fools who only cared about beautiful women. Since its founding, Country L has been in constant military conflict with Country H over territory. Under the leadership of its newly elected leader, Country L's military power has grown rapidly. He used secret weapons to keep the country fighting and eventually regain its occupied territory. Of all the aces up his sleeve, the most famous is a unit of fighters called Spark. Soon, the Spark unit noticed that a helicopter had arrived quite quickly, in less than 30 minutes. This situation made Mu Ye wary, as he even found the sound strange. His fears were not in vain, as they were suddenly fired upon from the helicopter. Everything around them turned into a fiery trap, and only then did Mu Ye realize that the enemy had arrived. He had no idea where the enemy had gotten reinforcements from, since the mission was completely secret. Mu Ye requested support from headquarters via radio, as enemy reinforcements had arrived. He ordered his men to be on alert and the snipers to cover the Special Forces. The men took cover in the villa building, firing at the helicopter from there. However, Xiaogu was exposed and was hit by a shot from the helicopter. Mu Ye asked the man if he was okay. Nevertheless, the man was unharmed and had only been grazed by the bullet. Pouring wine from a bottle onto his wound, he complained that he was wasting white wine. Mu Ye asked if the sniper was in place, and the sniper confirmed that he was already in place. He asked Mu Ye to lean on him and took aim. Mu Ye told him to go ahead, but at that moment he froze. He started shooting again, but then suddenly began to think. He didn't understand how their mission could have been exposed. Soon the enemy surrounded them, and they found themselves trapped like rats in a mousetrap. Mu Ye realized that they were doomed, so he grabbed a grenade and tried to throw it at the enemies, but at that moment he lost his right hand. He was wounded from behind, where his team was supposed to cover him, which came as a big surprise to him. His hand with the grenade fell right in front of his wounded subordinate. However, at that moment, another subordinate ran up, grabbed the grenade, and threw it at the enemies. This individual's actions did not cause harm to enemy forces, but the man himself was instantly punished with a hail of bullets. Mu Ye was still trying to understand why the enemies were behind them. At that moment, a gun was pointed at his head. However, the answer to Mu Ye's question was found quite quickly when a man appeared and said that nothing is impossible in this world. Mu Ye immediately recognized the man. There was a tattoo on the back of the man's hand and 3 rings on his fingers. A villain must always remain incognito, so he cannot be shown at the very beginning. He was not a movie villain, so he immediately decided to end everything and eliminate Mu Ye. Mu Ye kept trying to understand how this was possible and why this particular man made this choice. Suddenly, a bright light from the half-closed blinds fell on his face. He opened his eyes, trying to make sense of where he was even. The last thing he remembered was the traitor cutting his life short. He was too weak at the moment, but he felt like he was still alive. There was only one question in his mind now. Why was he still alive? Looking at his right hand, Mu Ye thought that that traitor had decided to torture him. He wondered if enemy forces were watching him, where the camera was, and why he was still there. His wound was deep, so the first thing he decided to do was to stop the blood. He had lost too much blood, so he needed to hurry. Walking over to the table, he found a stapler on the table, so he decided to use it. Mu Ye quickly sewed up his wound with the staples and the stapler. It was incredibly painful to do this. However, the pain made him turn his attention to his hand, and he realized that this hand didn't belong to him at all. The voice didn't belong to him either. Just at that moment, he saw his reflection in the mirror. A little frightened, he slowly approached the mirror to get a better look at himself in the reflection. Looking at himself in the reflection of the mirror, Mu Ye had absolutely no idea who it was in front of him. The man couldn't understand what had happened and how something like this was possible. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door, which alarmed the guy. A woman knocked on the door of the room. She informed Xiaoxian that dinner was ready. She admitted that it wasn't easy for the guy, but she asked the guy to go out and have lunch with his family. Mu Ye couldn't understand which Xiaoxian was even talking about. The woman informed him that she had cooked his favorite dish. These words caused the guy's mind to trigger. Suddenly, a memory of trying to feed him a burger with a cockroach came into the guy's mind. Xiaoxian didn't understand why they were doing this to him, since he had done nothing wrong to anyone. However, the guy became indignant that no one could eat lunch because of Xiaoxian. People around gathered to watch the spectacle. The guy confessed that they would have finished eating long ago if it wasn't for Xiaoxian. He told Xiaoxian to hurry up as he was very hungry. Xiaoxian didn't want to eat any burger and started complaining that Qin Tian had locked him in the restroom. At that moment, another guy came up to him and kicked him in the stomach. He warned Xiaoxian not to do anything stupid. The guy reminded Xiaoxian that he had proof. Also, Xiaoxian is disturbing everyone's rest, and everyone can see it. The guy then demanded that Xiaoxian apologize. All the people around gathered to watch the spectacle of Xiaoxian eating a burger with a cockroach. Eventually, the poor guy was broken and pulled a roach burger into his mouth. The guards and the rest of the people watched this spectacle with anticipation, and Xiaoxian was incredibly humiliated and embarrassed. Mu Ye now understood why the guy had committed such a horrible act. After much bullying, the cockroach burger was the last straw that broke the teenager. He just wanted to end his suffering. However, the irony was that Mu Ye was reborn in Xiaoxian's body. He was reborn into a teenager from country A named Huang Xiaoxian. Mu Ye's past life froze in that horrible moment when a traitor appeared in front of him. Along with his teammates, he lost his trust and hope. At that moment, Mu Ye vowed to definitely take revenge and never forgive traitors. Fate ordered him to be reborn in the body of a weak teenager. He had no strength, money, and power, but his hometown had one saying, "In the middle of nowhere, you can find pastures with plenty of water and grass." He had memories and experiences from his past life, and that set him apart from ordinary people. He knew his enemy, and his enemy doesn't know him, so the advantage was on his side. Now his main goal was to gain authority and find an opportunity to gather information. He needed to be patient and wait for the right moment. His stomach growled loudly. The guy realized that it was difficult to conquer peaks on an empty stomach. First, he needed to adapt to his current situation and surroundings, and then deal with the problem. And now he needed to get to know his new family. Looking in the closet, the guy found a note. After reading the note and changing his clothes, the guy promised to fulfill Xiaoxian's wish so that he could rest in peace. In his farewell note, Xiaoxian asked his parents to believe that if he survived, he would become the strongest person. Mom was happy that Shaoxian had finally come out of his room. Dad noted that Mom had put a lot of effort into preparing lunch, so he asked his son to be sure to eat everything before the food got cold. The new Shaoxian did not argue and was going to eat everything. He looked closely at the man and woman who were Huang Shaoxian's parents. Mu Ye never had parents. Looking at the food, the guy was surprised that they ate this every day because this food smelled much better than in a cafe. However, using chopsticks was incredibly difficult for him. He couldn't understand how people in Asian countries could eat with chopsticks at all. As soon as he ate the first bite, he was incredibly delighted. Chinese cuisine was so rich and delicious to him. Mum tried to ask why the guy was acting this way. However, Dad stopped her, reminding his wife that their son might not have eaten in a long time. And besides, they had already experienced something similar before. Mom agreed with her husband. The most important thing for her was that her son was healthy, which finally gave her peace of mind. She often brought food to Shaoxian's door, asking him not to forget to eat so that he could study well. One day, Shaoxian told his mother that he would no longer be attending the academy. His mother became concerned and attempted to determine whether he was having difficulty studying or if something else had occurred. Shaoxian was unable to disclose what had happened to him, so he simply stated that he was ill. While her son was eating, his mother noticed his arm was wrapped in bandages. She admitted that since her son had been attending the Mountain Hawk Academy, he had been coming home covered in bruises. She was about to bring up the fact that someone was beating her son, but the new Shaoxian interrupted her, saying that it was because of military training. The parents tried to find out if their son was getting along with his new acquaintances and classmates at the academy. His mother tried again to find out if her son was being bullied, but Shaoxian cut her off again, saying that everyone was very kind to him. His mother was so happy to hear that her son was doing well because she had been very worried about him all these days. The guy asked his mother not to worry about anything because he would repay his new acquaintances with the same attitude they showed him. 2 days later, the guy went back to the academy. Since he had inherited Huang Shaoxian's life, he had also inherited all of his grievances and desires. He called out to one of the passers-by and asked her where his dormitory was. The girl was very surprised. She didn't even understand why this disgusting guy was behaving this way. Meanwhile, the blonde man was lying on the bed playing with his phone. He complained that he had lost the game again. Shaoxian entered the room, thinking that the pests would never understand their mistake unless they were taught a lesson. As soon as he entered the room, he closed the door behind him. He loudly announced that he was back. The guy addressed everyone, calling them losers. He even asked if they were surprised that he had reappeared. The blonde man was delighted because, after losing the game, he was looking for someone to take his anger out on, and the guy came to him himself. He approached Shaoxian and asked where the guy had been for the past few days and whether he liked the burger. Glancing at his bed, Shaoxian noticed that the blonde man had made a mess of his bed. Mu Ye considered Huang Shaoxian a fool because such nobodies would never treat him well. The blonde man was outraged by the tone the guy used when talking to him. Besides, he had only thrown a little trash on his bed. Coming even closer, he asked what Shaoxian would do to him for such an act. The blonde man told the guy not to mention the ruined bed, otherwise he would come to his house. However, Shaoxian did not listen to the blonde man's tirade of insults and simply punched him in the chin. He remembered that there was a saying in the East, "When raising children, don't spare the rod." The blonde man instantly lost consciousness from the blow to his chin. The others began to protest that the guy had attacked their beloved Qin Tian. Shaoxian took up a fighting stance. He understood perfectly well that in terms of physical fitness, his current body was too weak. However, as a former military man, he knew that the most powerful weapons in the human body were the elbows and knees. So he began to use his elbows and knees to attack the remaining opponents in front of him. The guy believed that if you used your elbows and knees, even a weakling could prevail against a stronger opponent. All of his opponents were lying on the floor, unconscious. The guy ran his hand back through his hair and declared that from that day forward, none of Huang Shaoxian's offenders would escape retribution. Some time ago, a guy was running around the stadium. The instructor blew his whistle, signaling that everyone could line up. All the runners were incredibly exhausted. The instructor told Shaoxian to come to him. Slowly, the guy approached the instructor. However, at that moment, the instructor suddenly hit him so hard that the guy's legs buckled. He asked him sternly why he was lagging behind at the very end. The instructor complained that the guy should be ashamed of himself, as even the girls had overtaken him. Shaoxian explained that he had already told the instructor that he had had a fever yesterday and his body had not yet recovered. However, the instructor told the guy to shut up. He said that flu season was long over, so the guy shouldn't use that as an excuse. The instructor believed that the guy had no desire for self-improvement but had time to come up with excuses. The guy wanted to say that he was telling the truth, but the instructor grabbed him by the hair and told him to stop making excuses. Suddenly, the instructor hit the guy again with his left hand with all his strength, while the others watched happily. He said that the guy's hair was too long and that he looked like a girl. The instructor believed that the guy's father had simply failed to teach him properly, without explaining what a real man should look like. He even started insulting the guy's father. Then the instructor said that special training for first-year students at the Mountain Hawk Academy was a tradition that had been upheld since the school was founded. He believed that this tradition should be taken seriously because it could affect the final grade at the end of the year. The instructor even announced to everyone that they could end up like the guy kneeling in front of him if they didn't try hard. Huang Shaoxian tried to understand why the others were always bullying him, why he had become a victim. Returning to reality, the new Shaoxian understood perfectly well that the guy had simply been used as an example. He believed that this was a common disciplinary practice among the military, but he disagreed, considering such a method cruel towards ordinary students. Shaoxian's memory began to return, but he still had some gaps. He felt as if all this had happened to him personally. He needed time to learn about Country A and gather information, otherwise he might get confused and do something rash. As he continued jogging, the guy became even more aware that he had a very frail body and that training would take a long time. Suddenly, he stumbled and almost fell face first onto the asphalt. Nevertheless, he managed to stay on his feet, but sadly noted that his coordination and reaction speed in his current body were also not in the best condition. In the end, he decided to meet with the instructor on Monday. As soon as he returned home, his mother opened the door for him. She thought that Shaoxian had forgotten his keys at home, since he couldn't open the door himself. Her son confirmed her guess. His mother noticed that he had been leaving home early lately. She wondered whether her son was training or what he was doing at all. The guy confirmed her guesses again. In fact, he felt sorry for his mother, who didn't even know that her son was dead. A lucky Special Forces soldier had been reborn in her son's body. However, this was irreversible, so he had to accept it and move on with his life. He decided to talk to his mother. The guy told his mother that he was interested in a small town. The saying about the sandbar made a huge impression on him. People who don't know how to climb will eventually die. He was grateful to his current parents for giving him a second life, but he had his own worldview. The guy noted that he was already an adult, which meant it was time for him to learn to climb on his own. Mom and Dad were happy to hear such words from their son, because not long ago they had been very worried about him. Nevertheless, in his thoughts, he promised his parents that he would take revenge on all the bullies who had once hurt Shaoxian. October 21st, the last day of the annual exams at the Mountain Hawk Academy. The instructor sat in the classroom and watched videos of female students he had filmed while they were running. Thanks to his micro camera, he was able to capture what he considered to be amazing footage. The man thought that the work had been done to the highest standard, so if he edited the videos he had received a little and sold them on the internet, he would make a fortune. He watched the videos and admired the girls. But suddenly, Shaoxian came into view, ruining the whole shot. He couldn't understand how such a flawed guy had gotten into the best video. The man even noticed that he should thank the guy because thanks to him, he was going to move up one step higher on the career ladder. Otherwise, with his resume, he wouldn't have been able to get into Dasheng. The man was thrilled because he believed that Shaoxian was his lucky ticket. One day, Qin Tian heard that the man wanted to get a job as a security guard at Dasheng. He even laughed at the man, saying that he was talking nonsense. The man admitted that he understood everything. He knew that Dasheng's security guards were retired Special Forces soldiers, so of course he couldn't compare to them since he was just an ordinary police officer. Qin Tian noted that since the man understood everything, he couldn't just let him go. The man believed that the guy needed to return to training for first-year students at the Mountain Hawk Academy, as the academy's director attached great importance to the closed training program for first-year students. He also emphasized that the program was a key factor in the end-of-year evaluations. The man noted that he understood perfectly well that Qin Tian did not like others encroaching on his freedom and comfort, so he did not want to restrict Qin Tian in any way. However, Qin Tian asked the man rhetorically if he was capable of such a thing. The man immediately assured the guy that he did not dare to doubt his abilities. Nevertheless, he noted that in this way, Qin Tian would avoid unnecessary risks and trouble. He suddenly even admitted that he had some connections in the criminal district of Sicheng, so if Qin Tian needed any contraband, he would definitely get it. The man even shared that he could get red pills if Qin Tian needed them. Upon hearing about the red pill, Qin Tian was surprised. He immediately noticed that the man was a good guy. The man began to shower him with compliments again. Qin Tian finally warmed up to him. He said that his older brother was responsible for Dasheng's security, and he never got along with him. Therefore, he made the man an offer. If the man could get him the red pill, he would put in a good word for him, and maybe he would be accepted into the Dasheng security team. The man was delighted and said that if Qin Tian helped him join Dasheng, he would give him not only the pill, but also his life. Qin Tian decided to test the man's loyalty after he said those words. He pointed to Xiaoxian and told the man to beat up the guy who was studying with him in special training. The man thought the guy was Qin Tian's enemy, but Qin Tian admitted that he simply didn't like the guy's hairstyle. Returning to reality, the man noted that the guy was simply unlucky to become the target of a scoundrel. And then he continued watching the video with the girls. At that moment, someone knocked on the office door. The man pulled on his cap and tried to turn off the computer. He couldn't understand who could have come to the office at noon. As soon as he asked the person knocking on the door to come in, Xiaoxian entered. The man immediately thought that it was wrong to talk about people behind their backs, but after all the bullying he had endured, he didn't think the guy would ever come back to school. However, he noticed that the guy looked completely different from before and had even changed his hairstyle. Xiaoxian stared intently at the man and began to size him up. He saw a man in front of him, about 35 years old, about 180 centimeters tall, weighing approximately 85 kilograms. The man's figure was relatively proportional, with excess fat, weak shoulders, a slow gait, and a steady posture. The guy assumed that the man was completely unprepared. In addition, he noticed that the man had a habit of holding his belt with his right hand, which indicated his military past. The man's hands were rough, possibly from training. According to his assumptions, the man did not have a high level of physical fitness. The man asked why the guy was looking for him. Judging by the thickness of the man's left arm, the guy assumed that his left arm had been pulled back. There were no bullet marks on the man's arm, so he decided to rule out artillery. After analyzing all the available information, Xiaoxian concluded that the man in front of him had a slow-witted personality and low awareness of safety precautions. He also concluded that the man was a security guard and had no experience fighting on the battlefield. However, with his current physical condition, a one-on-one fight with the man was risky, so the guy came up with another plan. He gave the instructor a gift. The instructor sighed, wondering if the guy had decided to appease him. He noted that Xiaoxian had insulted Qin Tian, so he couldn't accept a gift from him, so he told the guy to get lost. The guy now understood perfectly well that the instructor knew perfectly well that Xiaoxian had been bullied all this time. Xiaoxian decided to play his trump card. He explained that the instructor had misunderstood him and that Qin Tian had actually already forgiven him. He also added that he was carrying out Qin Tian's orders as his confidant. The instructor was surprised that Qin Tian forgave the guy. He couldn't understand how that was even possible, because the guy had infuriated him so much. Now the instructor understood why the guy had changed his hairstyle, because he had a patron and the guy was just pretending. Xiaoxian looked at the man with a bloodthirsty gaze, noting that admitting one's mistakes is a good thing. The man laughed, noting that the guy was actually a good person. With a smile and a disgusting laugh, he admitted that after all the bullying from others, he thought the guy would lose his mind. In his thoughts, he admitted that if he had experienced such bullying, it would have been difficult for him to go on living. He was even surprised that such a disgusting guy like Qin Tian had already had enough and was able to let Xiaoxian go. Xiaoxian thanked the man, because the situation was resolved thanks to the instructor's words that if they weren't good enough, they had to become better. So he decided to give him a gift and hoped that the instructor would accept it as a token of gratitude. When he saw the box, the instructor was shocked, because the guy was handing him a Pineapple 16, which had just gone on sale. He had stood in line for 11 hours, but was unable to buy it. The man happily took the Pineapple 16, saying that there was no need for thanks, and that he was just doing his duty as an instructor. The guy paused and noted that he had been asked to ask the instructor one more question. The man relaxed completely and asked what question he would like to ask. Meanwhile, the guy had already made a lightning-fast move. For 2 days, he had been tormented by humiliating and unbearable memories of Shioxian. He saw the instructor watching Shioxian's suffering with an intriguing expression on his face. The man's face seemed to say that Shioxian was to blame for everything. Shioxian died because of all this suffering, and no one understood anything. The guy asked only one question: why him? And then he kicked the man between the legs with his right foot. Shioxian kept asking why such a weakling accidentally encountered the spawn of hell. However, the guy sadly stated that Shioxian would never know why he became the scapegoat. At that moment, at Shioxian's house, his mother dropped an egg from a bag onto the floor. She even complained that the bag seemed to have torn. The woman felt sorry because she had spent so much time on it. His mother was worried about Shioxian, wondering if he had taken the phone she had bought him. The man was shaking because the blow was incredibly traumatic. He was angry that the guy had done that. However, the guy was not going to stop there, but rushed towards the man and hit him in the throat with his left hand. Then he struck the man in the face with his right knee. He believed that even a weakling like him could strike such vulnerable spots. However, he did not consider this to be the most important thing, because the key step was to catch his opponent off guard. Then he struck the man in the face again with his right foot. At that moment, the computer turned on, and the guy saw what the man had been looking at all this time. The man cried out in alarm, telling the guy not to come closer. He asked if the man could answer his question right away. The guy asked the man not to rush, as he was not hurrying the man, but wanted to listen carefully to what the man had to say. Meanwhile, Qin Tian was in the hospital. His mother asked her son not to overexert himself, as the doctor said he had a mild concussion. However, the guy didn't seem to have been taught good manners by anyone, as he told his mother to shut up. Reading what was written about him, the guy was angry that all kinds of scum dared to say nasty things about him. After all, in the past, they wouldn't even dare to sneeze in his direction. His mother continued to ask her son to calm down, reminding him that the doctor had told him to stay in the hospital. She asked him not to be angry with her, as she was worried about him. But at that moment, he suddenly saw a published photo taken while he was unconscious. The guy immediately flew into a rage, threatening to find everyone who dared to say a single negative word against him. His mother was surprised to see her son like this and tried to calm him down. However, the guy was clearly not a model of politeness, as he told his mother to shut up immediately or he would shut her up himself. Tears welled up in his mother's eyes at such harsh words directed at her. The security guard standing outside the door of the room heard his mother even happily announce that she had ordered his favorite turtle soup for her son, so the son could eat it if he wanted. However, Qin Tian once again continued to yell at his mother, telling her to get out immediately. However, his mother still didn't leave the room in tears. At this moment, the girl asked her colleague if the second son of the Qin family had always been so spoiled and behaved so disgustingly. The man did not answer her question. The girl did not stop and wondered why he was silent. She even pointed out that the guy had been sent to the hospital on a case. The man told her not to talk too much and to do her job properly. The girl thought that the guy was acting too serious in such a situation. She stated that it was boring to just stand there like that, and he also didn't want to talk to her. The girl even grudgingly stated that she should have resigned. She would have done it a long time ago, because being a security guard is incredibly boring. Plus, she had to purposely spend a lot of time learning the language of country A just for this job. Suddenly, a man approached them. He admitted that he was even a little surprised, because the girl had adapted much better than he thought. The man remarked that it was not for nothing that the girl had been recruited for a position in the H country's intelligence agency. He then greeted the girl majestically, noting that this was their first meeting, and calling her name, Mona Trent. This man was Qin Sheng, the heir of the Qin family, the CEO of Dasheng Company. The girl's face turned red at this moment as Mr. Qin recognized her. With a smile, he reminded the girl that he was currently in charge of the company's security, so he remembered the information of all the employees. Mona Trent was in awe of the man, thinking he was handsome. Just at that moment, the door of the room opened and a surprised woman appeared from there. The mother was happy that her oldest son had come in, but was a little upset that she hadn't heard him come in or seen any notifications. Qin Sheng only smiled after hearing her words. He noted that he had just arrived by airplane and immediately went to the hospital. The older son politely asked his mother not to get upset, noting that his brother was too impulsive a guy and that he would talk to him himself. Mother agreed with his choice because the younger son, no matter how hard it was for him, still listened to his older brother. And then the frustrated woman left them along with her security guards. As Qin Sheng walked into the room, the girl stared after him, openly admiring the man. The second security guard thought that the girl's behavior was too unprofessional. Leaving with her head proudly raised, the woman demanded her security guards to immediately notify the second young mistress that Qin Sheng had returned. The security guards obediently began to carry out her order. Entering the room, Qin Sheng imperiously told his brother that it was not such a big problem. Qin Tian was no longer so vindictive and did not dare to insult his brother as well as his mother, but sat silently with the look of a beaten dog. Standing up near the wall, Qin Sheng asked not to be blamed for engaging in moralizing his brother. He politely reminded his brother that his brother should treat his elders with respect. After all, it wasn't easy for his mother to raise him. He then firmly announced that he would speak meekly and to the point, as there were only 10 minutes for their conversation because he had a business meeting to attend. Sitting down on the sofa and taking off his glasses, Qin Sheng imperiously pointed out that before he left, his brother claimed that he would be running the 26th district for 2 years. However, a month later, his brother ends up in the hospital. Qin Sheng became curious to know what caused his brother to be hospitalized. He even pointed out that Qin Tian had another 9 minutes and 30 seconds to go. After he said that, Qin Tian felt a terrifying aura emanating from his brother, and he was incredibly scared. Meanwhile, outside the door of the room, Mona Trent was surprised that ever since Qin Sheng entered the room, then Mr. Cranky Child had gone quiet. It even struck her that maybe something had happened that she was starting to get a little worried about. The second security guard didn't respond to her questions in any way. Suddenly, she wondered if Mr. Qin Sheng would like her. She even wondered if he liked sweet or spicy, since she liked spicy. The second security guard pointed out to her again that Qin Sheng was her employer, so he asked the girl to stop fantasizing about silly things and better not to flirt with Qin Sheng until she knew his true nature. The girl, on the other hand, confessed that she actually knew Mr. Qin Sheng very well. She knew that at 17, he had become the lightweight Sanshu champion in Country A, and at 18, he had been listed as a participant in the Youth World Games, and at 21, he had won the Mixed Martial Arts Super League lightweight gold belt. According to her information, over the next 2 years, he participated in 57 different mixed martial arts bouts in the middleweight division. He did not suffer a single defeat and became a new star in the fighting arena, becoming known for each. However, at the age of 23, due to the extra attention, he announced that he was retiring and disappeared. She was not aware of what Qin Sheng had been doing for 6 years, and when he reappeared, he was already attending the Dasheng Company's award conference as the 4th largest shareholder. The public at that moment thought that the reason for his return was to inherit the family business. However, it was aware of something that few people knew. Almost no one knew that a year earlier, Qin Sheng had started to rule the murky 26th district. He had become the underground king of the 26th district. Suddenly, a voice behind her said that she seemed to have heard of him. Qin Sheng smiled, reminding the girl that they were former intelligence officers and should protect their employer's privacy. The second security guard immediately thought that Qin Sheng did not leave on his own, but that he was forced to leave. Mona Trent was so surprised by Qin Sheng's sudden appearance in front of her that she thought it was as if he was a cat, since she didn't even hear a sound. However, Qin Sheng decided to politely ask her for a favor. He needed her to study one person. The girl was happy to have some fun in her life, so she gladly agreed to her employer's request. Qin Sheng informed her that he would send her detailed information by message and then informed her that he had to go. The girl wished him a happy journey, much to the displeasure of the second security guard, whom she was setting up to be reprimanded or fired by her behavior. Qin Tian, who heard their conversation, immediately grabbed his phone and called his henchmen. He told them to immediately find Huang Shaoxian and make sure that Huang Shaoxian couldn't even get out of bed anymore. Huang Shaoxian at the same time finally finished copying the information on the flash drive from the instructor's work computer. He was trying to remember how long it had been since he last met a man who had all the evidence on him stored in one place. The guy even thought that the man was definitely an idiot. He calculated that such dirt taken from the instructor's computer would be enough to get several years behind bars for the instructor. The guy even thought that if he turned the instructor into the police, it would be seen as revenge for Shaoxian. He was suddenly surprised when the instructor's cell phone rang. The man was shocked and incredibly frightened. Looking at the guy, he thought that the man in front of him was definitely not a human, but a demon. Shaoxian approached the inspector and calmly said that since it was already evening, he should go home to have dinner, because Oriental food is delicious only when it is hot. In his heart, the man was shocked that the guy had been tormenting him all this time with an expressionless look. It was as if the guy was looking at an animal, not a human being, and had no emotion at all. Shaoxian reminded the man that as an instructor, the man was not doing his job. He could have killed the instructor, but Joe's kitchen won't let him do that, so he decided that he would hand the instructor over to the law and let the police sort through the evidence and try the instructor. The man's face clearly expressed consternation. The guy even wondered slightly if the man was scared or regretful. However, he recalled that the man should have thought of this earlier when he condoned the bullying of one of the students. A cold sweat appeared on the man's face when the guy stated that he forgot to settle some more matters. So he quickly addressed a question he had wanted to ask the man for a long time, especially after the dirt that was on the man's computer. He left the room after that, looking at his tie while complaining about getting dirty. Walking down the street and looking at his phone, he decided he needed to find a place to clean himself up before he went home for dinner. He liked Oriental food so much that he started looking at pictures of the food. Some of the food looked appealing in the photos, but he didn't like spicy food. At this point, he even wondered if his preferences had changed after his rebirth. Therefore, he thought about asking his mother to cook something from Zhou cuisine. At this moment, Qin Tian's minions found him, informing Qin Tian about it. Qin Tian told the guy to take his time and gather the guys behind the academy for now. After all, he wanted to finish the guy himself. However, upon entering their blind spot, Huang Shaoxian abruptly turned around to look in their direction. He had already discovered he was being followed by taking a photo on his phone of a guy who shared a room with him and who he had previously given a good punch to. After a while, it was already dark in the city. Huang Shaoxian walked calmly into the alley, pretending not to notice the group of guys following him. However, quite quickly, the guys surrounded him. Staring at the leader of the group of guys, Shaoxian decided to psychologically crush his opponents. He said that he was surprised that they came back so soon, reminding them that he must not have beaten them up badly enough last time. The guy even directly asked if Liu Lian had forgotten what happened in their last encounter. Liu Lian thought he was a tough guy, so he told Shaoxian not to show off because Shaoxian had attacked him sneakily last time. He was about to say that if it wasn't for his sneak attack, he would have easily dealt with him, but Shaoxian told him to keep his expression down. Shaoxian then pointed Liu Lian to his neck. Liu Lian abruptly remembered what happened to him last time. He became enraged, declaring that this time the guy would definitely be a dead man. Huang Shaoxian even chuckled, calling the guy by his name again. Liu Lian is consonant with the word train, as if he lacks training and is weak. This kind of ridicule made Liu Lian incredibly furious. He rolled up his shirt sleeves, insulting the guy and threatening to tear him to pieces. The other henchmen cheered Liu Lian on. They asked Liu Lian not to hold back, believing that the guy should eat a cockroach burger as a treat for his insolence once again. Liu Lian slowly rushed towards Shaoxian, on the way thundering that the guy wouldn't leave this place alive. Mona Trent was standing quietly on the balcony of one of the nearby houses, wearing a hoodie and cap as if trying to hide her appearance and face. She had a perfect view of Huang Shaoxian's confrontation against Qin Tian's henchmen. However, considering Qin Sheng's previous request, she had to call him. What would Mona Trent do at Qin Sheng's behest? And will she just stand by and watch the guy's legs get broken, or will she do something about it? Mona Trent was telling her boss that the person the boss had asked her to follow was in a bit of trouble. She wondered to the boss if she should intervene in the situation. Qin Sheng inquired what exactly had happened. The girl explained that Qin Tian's friends had surrounded the guy. She remembered them since she had seen them before. Qin Sheng was more interested in whether she had thoroughly checked the guy's background. And after confirming the check from her, he decided that she should just observe him. Qin Sheng was even a little annoyed that the younger brother was giving him trouble because of his temper. After that, he ended the conversation and went back to talking to Mr. Jiang. He politely asked Jiang to continue the conversation, reminding him that Jiang wanted to talk to him about something important. The man mentioned that since the red pill entered the market of the 25th district, the profits of the underground business had increased by 300%. Therefore, many of his superiors felt that now the 26th district should also grab a tidbit. That was the reason why he had approached Qin Sheng. The man's name was Jiang Huaizhong. He was the chairman of the board of JT Entertainment, the heir of the Jiang family, and the executive director of JT Investments. However, Qin Sheng did not share his point of view, advising him not to talk about what his bosses cared about. He wanted to know Jiang Huaizhong's opinion. The man admitted that he thought it was a great opportunity to take the underworld of the 26th district one step forward. After listening to him, Sheng admitted that the profit of 300% from this event was indeed attractive, but he still continued to insist that the 26th district should be completely clean of any pills. Besides, if anyone decided to change this, they would pay with their lives. Qin Sheng clearly expressed his stance regarding such changes to the 26th district. Jiang Huaizhong realized that there was no way out. He asked Sheng not to look down on him since they had been friends for so many years. He finally understood Sheng's position and said that he would convey Qin Sheng's opinion to the boss. He added that he would tell them that Qin Sheng had decided that they should enjoy life and when they got old, retire and not get involved in anything. Qin Sheng accepted his answer and then got up from the couch. He said that he had to go already as he needed to attend the wedding reception of the mayor's daughter. Jiang wanted to see him off, but Sheng refused, reminding him that Jiang still had important things to do and he would find his own way. The girl standing near the door politely said goodbye to Qin Sheng. As soon as the door closed behind Qin Sheng, Jiang Huaizhong stared thoughtfully at his desk. In the same instant, his face creased with anger. He then started throwing objects that came into his hand. He was incredibly infuriated that Qin Sheng dared to insult him like this. The man didn't understand how Qin Sheng even dared to take up space in his territory. Jiang thought that the guy was just a retired boxer, so was obligated to respect him. After all, he was the one who should actually become the underground king, not Qin Sheng. Jiang promised that sooner or later he would tear Qin Sheng to pieces. In a fit of anger, he even threw a chair towards the door, and the chair hit the door next to the girl. Not paying attention to the frightened girl at all, he told her to get out of his office as he was in a bad mood right now. Meanwhile, the hooligans who supported Liu Lian continued to push him to beat up Huang Shaoxian. The guy only smiled as that was exactly what he wanted to do. He remembered that martial arts said that to attack the heart was to attack the mind. Therefore, the best way to defeat a person was to piss them off. Liu Lian was Qin Tian's #1 henchman. He often bullied Shaoxian, so it could be said that he was Shaoxian's direct offender. The guy estimated that the target's height was 190 centimeters, weighing around 100 kilograms. Shaoxian's height was 174 centimeters, and weight was 51 kilograms. Does he even eat at all, or is this classic anime height and weight that is as far from reality as possible? The guy realized that Liu Lian was twice as big as him, so in reality, if he was a normal person, it wouldn't give him a single chance of winning this confrontation. Based on his observations, Liu Lian lacked boxing posture and did not have the usual pace of boxers. So he concluded that the guy in front of him did not have any fighting skills. Paying attention to his wrists, he noticed that they were swollen. He could also smell the faint odor of alcohol that came from Liu Lian. The guy was well aware that at this moment Liu Lian had poor self-control, was quick to get irritated and extremely emotional, and did not have any resilient mental qualities at all. After analyzing the information about Liu Lian, he concluded that the probability of him winning was quite high. At this moment, Liu Lian swung his right hand, which was his dominant hand. He then made a turn to the left, and his speed was greatly reduced, so his body was discoordinated. The leg kick towards the guy was not high enough, so the guy didn't even feel threatened, but only noticed that Liu Lian's flexibility left much to be desired. All this time he continued to analyze Liu Lian and easily dodged his punches. Liu Lian became highly irritated after noticing that the guy was so agile and that he couldn't hit him. Xiaoxian noticed that Liu Lian was using his right fist again, not making any changes in his movements at all. The guy came to another conclusion that Liu Lian had poor concentration and low IQ. Xiaoxian and Mona Trent simultaneously thought that the guy was most likely using a classic triple left-to-right front kick. Mona Trent even thought the triple punch was too boring. Liu Lian approached the guy again and swung his huge arm. Xiaoxian easily dodged his punch and then attacked with his left hand on the elbow of Liu Lian's right arm. Liu Lian tried to realize what had even happened, but at that moment, Xiaoxian hit him with his right hand right in the neck. Liu Lian started waving his arms around haphazardly, trying to hit the guy with his fist. However, the nimble Xiaoxian easily dodged his punches, and at the right moment, he struck Liu Lian's throat with his right hand. Liu Lian once again felt the pain that he did not expect today. Xiaoxian didn't listen to him at all and only thought that the strength of his current body was still too weak, so he was going to train more. Liu Lian continued to swing his arms haphazardly, trying to hit Xiaoxian. At this moment, he noticed another attack from Xiaoxian. Therefore, he figured that Xiaoxian wanted to snap his neck, so he wasn't going to let Xiaoxian do this to him. Liu Lian covered his throat with both hands. However, that was all Xiaoxian wanted to do. After waiting for the right moment to attack, he went on the offensive. Xiaoxian swung his right leg and kicked his right knee properly between Liu Lian's legs. Liu Lian did not expect this at all. The monstrous pain brought tears to his eyes. The other guys felt this blow that cold sweat appeared on their faces. They all thought that the guy had used too dirty a technique. Even Mona Trent thought that the guy used a dirty hold. However, she was surprised that he had won. She now realized that all his previous attacks were just for this control strike. The girl even internally praised him, noting that he was incredibly smart. Squirming from the pain between his legs, Liu Lian fell to his knees. Still writhing in pain, he struggled to utter his words, promising that he would get the guy even from under the ground and then use his own hands to send the guy to the other world. However, Xiaoxian didn't end there. Swinging his briefcase properly, he hit Liu Lian's face with it. Liu Lian immediately fell to the ground and lost consciousness. The girl was surprised that the guy knocked out a healthy guy so easily with a single blow of his backpack. She even thought the guy was carrying bricks in his backpack. The other guys were outraged, thinking that Xiaoxian could only attack sneakily. However, they did not expect that after knocking out their leader, Xiaoxian would rush straight towards them. Instantly, he came at them and started beating them one by one. Some were hit in the stomach, some in the shoulder, some in the head. He pretty quickly straightened out half the guys who had originally arrived to beat him up. The guys who stayed on their feet were amazed at how he was able to knock out so many guys with a few moves. One of the guys advised the rest of the guys not to be afraid, because Xiaoxian is one guy and there are many of them. But at the same moment, Xiaoxian stared at them like a tiger at its prey. He reminded them that it is often said in Shazhou that if you see a tiger showing its teeth, don't think it is smiling. After that, the guy reached into his backpack and grabbed the handle of some object. The other guys were startled, their faces instantly covered in copious cold sweat as they realized Xiaoxian had a hammer. Everyone who was on their feet instantly rushed out, thinking that the guy was definitely crazy for carrying a hammer. Looking at the unconscious guys lying there, he thought they were nothing more than rabble. After all, if they were even a little bit braver, it would be incredibly hard for him. Nevertheless, his original goal was accomplished. The most difficult problem had been solved, but now there was still one more problem left. After that, he informed the girl that he had noticed her a long time ago, so he told her to come out. The girl even gave him a round of applause at her appearance. She admitted that she absolutely did not think that a street fight would make such an impression on her. Mona Trent was quick to appreciate that first the guy deprived the most combative opponent of his composure, then effectively overwhelmed him, struck a blow, exerting psychological pressure. In addition, she noticed that the guy demonstrated weapons, thus completely breaking the opponent's psychological defense line. She even expressed her deep gratitude to the guy, noting that he made her assignment less boring. Mona Trent saw perfectly well that at first glance a simple weak guy, but nevertheless with what a strong heart really was. The girl decided to clarify some details. She had originally thought that the guy had used the martial techniques of Country A, so she was eager to find out where a guy like him could have learned it. Sheoxian didn't make any excuses, but immediately asked who she was, why she was following him, and who had sent her. The girl also knew how to annoy people, so she told him that if he wanted to know the answers to his questions from her, he had to fight her first, and if he won, she promised to tell him everything. Just reborn, and already he was attracting unwanted attention from those who should never have known of his existence. Meanwhile, Sheoxian's father went to the nearest market to buy groceries. He needed mutton, eggs, rice, soybeans, black pepper, Sichuan pepper, and butter. After a second's hesitation, he also remembered that he needed radishes. He really didn't quite understand why Zhou cuisine needed to use radish, but he still wanted to find a radish as soon as possible so that he could go home quickly. Glancing at his phone and flipping through messages from his wife, his father watched his wife throw memes at him. He needed to get home as quickly as possible, as his wife was already expecting his son, as his son was finally feeling good lately. After he paid for his purchases, he wondered why his son was interested in Zhou cuisine. After all, when he was a child, his son had diarrhea and vomiting after bringing food from Zhou cuisine. At the same time, in one of the alleyways of the city, Mona Trent said that if the guy lost, he would have to answer her questions. She asked if he agreed to her terms and also called him by the name Huang Shaoxian, which made the guy even more wary of her. After that, Shaoxian began to examine his opponent. In front of him was a girl about 165 centimeters tall, weighing 60 kilograms. The girl's figure was proportional, trim. She had good body coordination. At first glance, the girl's current pose was casual, but the guy managed to notice that her eyes were looking at him, her opponent, uninterruptedly. So he considered her confident and cautious. He wondered who she was and why she was interested in him. If it wasn't him she was interested in, then why was she looking for something on Huang Shaoxian? Mona Trent remembered that the guy was a punching bag until 2 weeks ago. Therefore, she was extremely curious how a person could change so much in such a short time. In addition, she noticed that the guy was using long-forgotten combat techniques of Country A. However, the guy was most interested in the girl's eyes and that they were red. He remembered that red eyes were a distinguishing feature of the people of Country H. After that, he threw the hammer on the ground. Then he stood up in a fighting stance. He didn't understand why the girl in front of him now was interested in Sheoxian. Even so, he didn't want to get too carried away with the girl until he did his own investigation. Mona Trent was a bit surprised when the guy got into a fighting stance, because she expected that the guy was planning to use ancient skills to strike. Therefore, she even asked for the guy to demonstrate his skills, as she was eager to learn them. After saying that, the girl went on the offense and attacked the guy with her right hand. Sheoxian thought her movements seemed too fast, but instantly realized that he was the one who was just that slow right now. Sheoxian focused all his attention on the girl. As soon as her fist touched his, he noticed that the girl was incredibly strong. Mona Trent also noticed that the guy had a damn good reaction time, but she couldn't understand how the guy had gone from a punching bag to his current level in such a short time. The girl wasn't going to stop there, however, and ducked down and struck the guy with her left fist. Getting into a defensive stance, the guy made attempts to defend himself from her blows. During those few seconds, he noticed that the girl's movements were incredibly clean and precise, and that the force of each of her blows was like a splash of water. The girl was assessing the guy as well, noting to herself that the guy was very calm and held his defenses under her continuous attacks. She wondered if they would continue on like this. She also wondered if the guy would continue to stand in a defensive stance. The girl couldn't wait to see all the skills the guy had mastered. so she only intensified the attack with a hail of blows from her fists. As an experienced Special Forces officer, he appreciated that the girl had excellent speed, strength, and skill, so he realized that she had definitely undergone professional training. Because of her eyes and skill, the guy thought that maybe she was a retired H-country soldier. Tired of such attacks, the girl asked what the guy was really trying to accomplish, since he was still holding a defensive stance. The girl tiredly stated that guys like Sheoxian make girls bored, and then she tried to use her right leg to attack. However, that was all the guy wanted, so he dodged her leg kick, and then tried to attack the girl with his right fist. Mona Trent immediately took a defensive stance, inwardly mocking the guy because he thought that she would go on the attack. Now she couldn't wait to feel the guy's strength. But against her wishes, the guy just dashed through her, leaving the girl surprised. He then grabbed his hammer that was lying on the ground and threw it at Mona Trent. She totally didn't expect the guy to do that to her. Mona Trent tried to cover her face with her hands from the hammer, while the guy was already running away from her as far as possible. Getting hit with a hammer thrown by a guy in her direction, the girl was incredibly pissed off. However, she noticed that the guy caught the moment she switched from attack to defense and then backed off. She realized that the guy had thrown the hammer at her just to get away from her. Mona Trent was angry that the guy dodged her attacks, threw the hammer at her, and then took it and just ran away. Only now did she realize that the backpack, the hammer, and the escape route were on the same line, which meant that the guy probably originally wanted to avoid a fight with her, but she wasn't going to let him go that easily. The girl was incredibly angry that some high school kid was able to fool her like that. She really wanted to catch him and get all the details from him. At that moment, she noticed that the guy suddenly stopped at a corner and thought that the guy had hit a dead end, which meant she had a good chance to catch him. With the reaction of a tiger, the girl tried to catch the prey standing with its back to her. In a flash, she tried to wrap her arms and legs around his neck, complaining that the guy dared to run away from her. Climbing up to his neck and making a grab, the girl informed him that his plan had failed. Now she was curious to see how the guy would get out of his current predicament. In the same instant, the guy realized that she had used the Telfar technique. The Telfar technique is a combat-unique technique of the H-Nation's intelligence service, Moonblade. The technique is used so that the opponent sits on his target's shoulders and, using his arms, chest, and hips, applies all-around pressure to the target's neck. The Telfar technique requires an extremely high level of the opponent's coordination, inner strength, stamina, physique, and physical attributes, so it was a very difficult combat technique to control. No one but agents of the H country's intelligence unit could use it because a person's neck would break in a second. The Telfar technique is a brutal and forbidden technique that is mainly used in contract killings. It is almost impossible to get free from it. Therefore, the guy assumed that the girl was most likely from Moonblade, but he didn't know why she was following an ordinary student named Huang Shaoxian. In addition, he realized that the situation was out of control. The guy told her to get off his neck immediately, but the girl was having fun, so she wondered if the guy would admit defeat already. She even stated that she had just started abusing him yet. However, earlier, the guy didn't just stop for nothing. Suddenly, the man asked the guy who it was with him. With sadness in his heart, the guy noted that neither bullying, nor mercenaries, nor anything else, none of this would have made him feel as depressed as he did now. As it turned out, the surprised man who was wondering who the girl next to the guy was turned out to be his father. Mona Trent was studying the guy's file, so she instantly recognized that the guy's father was in front of her. Sheoxian calmly informed the father that she was his classmate, and then he asked the girl to let him go so that he could resolve the awkward situation. Mona Trent only smiled, sensing the opportunity. She got off the guy's neck and grabbed his hand, saying a polite hello to his father. She informed him that her name was Mona and that she was the guy's girlfriend. The father was incredibly surprised, so completely unaware of her existence. The guy's face was covered with cold sweat, as he too had not expected the girl to play such a card. 80 years ago, the first head of Country H, with the assistance of Country A, forcibly occupied 80,000 square kilometers of territory in the eastern part of Country L, and after that, he founded a state there. They believed that they lived on divine land, and that their territory had been founded from time immemorial, due to the writings in the sacred texts of the Moonflower cult. For decades, Country H had invaded the territory of Country L and persecuted its people. Her territory had also expanded from 80,000 square kilometers to 250,000 square kilometers. Even though the enemy was small, the people of the country did not stop resisting. The army called the Righteous Army was born from the flames of war. They gave their lives to protect the dignity of the motherland. One day, they even managed to defeat the alliance of countries H and A. Among them, the Spark Special Unit, which was known as the #1 Secret Service organization in the world, and which fought against the Moonblade of Country H, performed particularly well. As a result, they managed to behead the Prime Minister of Country H. Currently, countries H and L are in a stalemate, just like Spark and Moonblade. At this moment, the former Moonblade agent and the former Spark senior instructor were sitting and eating at Huang Shaoxian's house. Suddenly, the husband and wife looked at each other and communicated with just a glance, instantly understanding each other. Father was the first to address Mona, causing her to look away from the food. The father apologized to Mona as they did not prepare properly, as they did not know that she was coming to them. He also admitted that they didn't know what kind of food she preferred, so he wondered if today's food was good for her to eat. The mother also informed Mona with a smile, just like the father, that this was the first time she had cooked something from Zhou cuisine, and she didn't think their son's girlfriend would join their dinner. She even admitted that she was quite nervous about it. Mona smiled and asked the guy's parents not to worry, noting that their serving of food was so good that as a native of Country H, she couldn't find anything objectionable about the food. The girl confessed that she never thought she would be able to respond to such delicious Zhou cuisine outside of her homeland. The woman was so happy that her face even turned red, and she advised the girl to eat more in such a case. The father was surprised that his wife fell for the sweet talk of his son's girlfriend so easily. Coughing, the father pointed out that since Mona was from Country H, it meant that she had to work hard to settle down abroad. Therefore, the man admitted that he was a bit curious how the girl met Shaoxian, since the latter had never mentioned that he had a girlfriend. At this moment, the girl stared intently at the guy. The guy sitting next to the girl was also extremely curious to know this detail of the story from her. He was well aware that no one knew that he had been reborn, so he was extremely curious to know why the organization was interested in Huang Shaoxian. In the end, she informed him that looking back, she thought that their meeting was fate. After that, the words just flowed out of the girl's mouth. She said that it was summer vacation in her senior year of high school and that she had accidentally walked into a gallery. In the gallery, one painting caught her attention. It was the scenery of Country A. At that moment, she decided to move to A country to see these landscapes with her own eyes. Later, when she had already begun her studies in this country, she visited the art museum on campus, and again came across the same painting she had seen earlier. She immediately recognized the painting, but when she realized that the original was in front of her, she was shocked. For the author of the painting was a student of Mountain Hawk Academy. After reading the information about the painting, she learned that the guy's name was Huang Shaoxian. Mother instantly recalled that Shaoxian had drawn this picture in the 2nd grade of middle school. The father even confessed that only because of this painting, the guy was accepted into Mountain Hawk Academy. The brilliant actress's face even turned slightly red when she stated that she couldn't believe that the author of that painting was a guy her age. The girl even confidently stated that the guy is a real talent since childhood. After analyzing what he had just heard from the girl, the guy even began to speculate that maybe they had somehow found out that he had been reborn after all. But he immediately discarded this theory because in this case they would eliminate him immediately, because he was at the top of their list of people to eliminate. Mona went on to say that when she left the museum, she immediately found the class Shaoxian was in, and when she met him, she expressed her admiration for him, and that's how they became friends. However, the guy noticed that the girl was holding a cell phone with some information about Huang Shaoxian. Therefore, he assumed that there was a good chance that their target was not him, but Huang Shaoxian, but now he was even more curious as to why the organization could basically be interested in a guy like Huang Shaoxian. In addition, based on the girl's behavior, it could be deduced that her goal was not to kill him. Looking at the information about herself on her phone, the guy found that Huang Shaoxian's information was quite rudimentary. By this point, Mona had finished her story, noting that shortly after they met and became friends, they decided to start dating. His mother was so happy to hear such a sweetly false one from the girl who pretended to be her son's girlfriend. She admitted that she was always worried that Shyeokshin might not like girls. Mona tried to convince her that all the fears of the guy's mother were unfounded. She said that he was a very good guy and that there was no other guy like him who was as talented and gentle as he was nowadays. The guy noticed that all the conversations revolved around Hwang Shaoxian, so he was even more curious about what the girl was investigating. He even thought for a moment that Hwang Shaoxian had some secret identity that he couldn't recall from the guy's memory yet. At this moment, his mother couldn't stand it and confessed that they used to worry for a long time because of the guy's mild temperament. And she also confessed that lately her son had been coming home with injuries all the time. But he explained it to his parents with military training. So still concerned, mother asked the girl if she could tell her if someone was bullying her son at the academy. Mona was surprised to hear such words from the woman. She could understand why the guy might have been faking it at the academy, but she didn't understand why the guy's family didn't know about the guy's abilities. Shaoxian was now a little panicked that the girl was about to tell his family everything he would have liked to keep quiet about. Still surprised, the girl said in an incomprehensible tone that the guy was actually very strong. She wanted to talk about how the guy had recently beaten up some guys. However, at this point, instead of saying that he beat up the guys, she reported that the guy made some guys feel good about themselves. She changed the ending of her sentence as she felt a murderous aura emanating from the guy towards her. Shoving his forkful of food into his mouth, he was relieved that just a little more, and the girl would have told everything about him. But he was even relieved that the girl had a rather keen perception of the murderous aura. His mother didn't quite understand what the girl meant. Then, a little perplexed, Mona added that the guy had won the guys over with his gentleness, and that they were now friends. After that, she stared at the guy intently, not understanding how an academy student could have such a strong murderous aura. In the end, she thought that she was just imagining it. After all, she had only seen such a strong aura once in her life, and there was no way an ordinary student could have such a murderous aura. Cutting the meat on his plate, the guy concluded that the girl's purpose was to investigate Hwang Shaoxian. But he felt that it couldn't be ruled out that she might be interested in him personally. Since moonblades were too unpredictable, the guy did not discount this option. Therefore, the first thing he wanted to do was to check the information about the girl. The woman grabbed the girl's hands and asked the girl that she should not deceive her. His mother asked again if it was true that Shaoxian had actually made friends at the academy. These topics only gave the guy a headache. He wanted to end this topic as soon as possible. He even admitted that he seemed to have lost his nerve to be caught so easily. Under pressure from his mother, the girl finally confirmed that the guy had many friends in the academy. The mother was so happy to hear that her son had friends at the academy, because for the past few weeks she had been very worried, thinking that someone at the academy was actually bullying her son. The woman wondered who her son's best friend was, and what kind of person he was. Mona tried to reassure her by pointing out that the guy's best friend's name is Chin Tian, and that he is very educated. The woman even asked that her son's best friend be invited to their house for dinner next time. She couldn't wait to meet him, that she even promised to cook many special dishes that they had never tasted. However, the girl said that it would be impossible to do so in the near future, since Chin Tian had recently been badly hurt in a fight with his classmates and was now in the hospital. The woman became worried, clarifying if her son's best friend was all right. She even wanted to visit the guy in the hospital. Mona even reported that the guy was having a hard time, as he almost took his breath away. However, the guy decided that it was time to stop talking like that. He coughed and then informed his parents that they were full. He explained to his parents that this was Mona's first time, so it was rude to bombard her with too many questions, because that would scare her off. So he announced that they'd better go talk to her or go for a walk or something. Mona stared at him with an extremely disgruntled look. It pissed her off that the guy was already intent on chasing her away, because he was probably afraid that she would reveal the guy's secret to his parents. At the same moment, his father and mother only glanced at each other and immediately understood each other. They got up from the table and then informed their son that they had decided to head upstairs. The father asked his son to take proper care of the girl. Mother, on the other hand, asked Mona to come to them more often and make herself at home. What were his parents up to? And what will Mona report to her boss Qin Sheng? As soon as his parents moved away from the table, Xiaoxian was glad that this awkward conversation was finally over. Now he could relax while Huang Xiaoxian's parents were not around. However, Mona was not burning with the same desire. She slyly informed him that people who have a lot of skeletons in their closet arouse a lot of curiosity. The cold-blooded guy calmly noted that such words were being said to him by a person who had inexplicably appeared in front of him. It was also inexplicable how she had gotten to his house. He then rudely stated that they were done with both dinner and the circus she had put on, so he told her to get out of his house. He also added that she shouldn't be ignorant. The girl noted that the guy is incredibly rude, and after all, she is a fan of his work. She even said that now she could see why the guy was disliked by the girls. Standing up from the table, Xiaoxian told her to stop pretending and answer who had sent her to him in the first place and for what purpose. He also added that maybe then he would answer the girl's questions. The girl was amused that the guy told her to stop pretending. She found it funny, noting that the guy is skilled in martial arts but pretends to be a wimp. Mona also noted that the guy's family is wealthy and can afford to buy whatever paintings they want. However, she noted that paintings, unlike self-preservation instinct and martial arts skills, can't be faked. Therefore, the girl asked that he be honest with her. The father and mother, meanwhile, because of the limited viewing angle, thought their son was kissing a girl. The father was a little surprised at how impatient they were. The mother looked at her son's back and sadly noted that Xiaoxian had grown up overnight. Her heart was troubled by a strange premonition. Suddenly, she turned to her husband and whispered to him to tell their son important things useful at his age. Time was limited, so the guy was thinking of ways to extract the necessary information from the girl. Mona, on the other hand, was amused, considering that the guy was upset. She also added that he was too weak for her to consider him a rival. At this point, the guy was called out by his father, who asked him to come over for a moment. The guy was not happy that his father was wasting his time at such a moment. Nevertheless, he went to his father. The father asked him to come over quickly so as not to keep the girl waiting. The father took out a red envelope and held it out to his son. He informed that they had prepared money for Mona, so the guy should give this envelope to her later with his best wishes. Looking at the red envelope, the guy was amazed that the parents started treating Mona like a daughter-in-law. The father moved closer to his son and whispered to his son to remember to open the envelope and see what was in it, for there was something in it for him. Xiaoxian sincerely didn't understand what the parents were up to. Mona, standing at a distance from them, didn't understand what the guy was discussing with his father. She was even disappointed that she couldn't read lips. But suddenly she was intensely interested when she saw the red envelope in the guy's hands. Her face turned red when she thought about the fact that it was a tradition of country A. When a guy introduces his girlfriend to his parents for the first time, they hand his girlfriend an envelope of money as a gift for meeting her. The girl was delighted because now she would get overtime. With delight, Mona began to praise country A, thinking that country A is deservedly considered a standard of etiquette. The father informed his son that they would go back to their room and the guy should take good care of the girl and not be rude. Returning to the joyful girl, the guy in his thoughts asked his parents not to worry, for he would take care of the girl properly and that even politeness would not be needed. He remembered that there was an old saying in Shazhou, "If you want to hunt a tiger, take a pack of hyenas with you." Walking up to the girl, the guy put the red envelope into the back pocket of his pants, asking the girl not to even look at the red envelope, and then told her to leave the house with him. The girl was dumbfounded by what she saw. She was enraged with the guy's actions, stating that the money was meant for her. However, he besieged her by asking her if the money was definitely meant for her. He reminded her that the money was being given to his girlfriend from his parents, and Mona was not his girlfriend. Before the upcoming hunt, he needed to be sure of the strength of the hyena's bite. Mona was extremely displeased, noticing that the guy seemed to want to anger her, and she wouldn't fall for stupid provocations like Liu Lian's foolishness. He went on the attack at her, noting that he didn't know if she was going to pull out her country 8's writing from her pocket and declare that he was her boyfriend, and that his parents were her parents, and that his house was her house. He couldn't wait for the girl to show her true colors. He even pointed out that after all, they had been parasitizing other people's territory for decades and still maintained a cult of expanding their territory, aka God-given land. The girl was shocked by his words. In a flash, she tried to attack him, but the guy managed to catch her arm. He noticed that there was something strange in the girl's actions. The guy realized that he was probably mistaken, and the girl was not one of the Moonblades. The girl began to shower him with insults, noting that he had too long a tongue. Since childhood, he had been involved in military training in Shangzhou, the so-called meat grinder. Therefore, his perception of danger and killing intent was never wrong. Country H, a country that combines political and religious worldviews. All the people of this country are adherents of the Moonflower cult, including Moonblade's agents. Over the years, he had researched this organization and came to the conclusion that all of its members, up to the third generation, were religious fanatics. And the girl who was in front of him now had no intention of killing him. When he insulted her country and their Moon Bible, which is considered sacred in the cult, the girl maintained her equanimity. Mona only grinned, noting that she didn't know what the guy was up to, but advised him to back off before it was too late. Pulling her cap back over her head, she declared that she wouldn't tease him anymore, and thanked him for tonight. The guy couldn't be sure of her identity, but the fact that she wasn't a cult follower was a proven fact. Eventually, the guy decided to find out directly who she was and why she was following him. But the girl shrugged it off again, thinking that if the guy knew too much, he wouldn't sleep well. Pulling on her jacket, she said goodbye to him, noting that they would see each other again, and then left his house. Xiaoxian realized that it was too presumptuous to conclude that she was a Moonblade agent just because of Telfar's technique. Now he didn't rule out that other units might have learned Moonblade's battle techniques, and he was just confused by the girl's red eyes. However, he realized that he could not relax, for even the closest person could betray. He installed an automatic alarm system that goes off every 40 minutes. But luckily the girl left, otherwise the police would have surrounded the house in a few minutes. The guy knew very well that he was too weak at this point, so such a precaution was simply necessary. He then summoned Pineapple's assistant and asked it to upload the video and restart the timer. The assistant reported that the voice print verification was successful. So the assistant reported that the video had been uploaded to his personal cloud and the automatic alarm was restarted, so the remaining time was 40 minutes. He was only in no real danger as long as his real identity was not revealed. Opening the door of his room, he decided that it didn't make any difference whether the Moonblade girl was from Moonblade Girl or some other organization, because Huang Shaoxian's mediocrity was to his advantage. It was his best cover from his enemies at the moment. The guy realized that he could improve, gather information, and fulfill the death wish of the real Huang Shaoxian. So he wanted to start implementing his plans as soon as possible. His current main trump card was experience and foresight from his previous life. He was well aware that the girl's appearance could not be ignored, as she was overconfident for a reason. As he counted the money from the red envelope, he thought that the girl was gathering information about him for some good reason, and wouldn't just stop. He wondered if their next meeting would be fateful. The guy decided that the next time he met her, he would have to prepare thoroughly. Walking down the street, Mona Trent was very cheerful. Holding a red envelope in her hands, she couldn't hide her curiosity. She was extremely curious about what secrets the guy was hiding. Not yet realizing that Xiaoxian had taken the money from the red envelope, she opened the envelope. The girl teased the guy, hoping that he wouldn't be too upset if she opened the red envelope. Slipping her hand into the envelope, she felt that the envelope was stuffed with something. So she was in anticipation that there was a lot of money in there. Taking out the contents from the envelope, a small red package, she looked suspiciously at the surprise in the envelope, and then the girl expressed her anger, for she didn't expect such a surprise at all, but wanted the money. Meanwhile, the 26th district, the Western slums. Another underground fighting match was taking place. The opponent was crowding the man, giving him no chance to win. The man was shocked to realize that he was facing a real monster whose blows he could not withstand. He quickly realized that he was just a toy for such a fighter, and that he would not be able to resist for long, and perhaps even die. Just at that moment, the gong struck, and the man was saved. His opponent was upset that the man was so lucky. Trying to catch his breath, The battered man went to his corner. He could not afford to lose or fall in this place. Suddenly, Amin approached Mr. Jan and was about to inquire. But Jan immediately informed that he agreed and let the man give him the pill. After that, 3 red pills appeared in Jan's hand. The man drank the red pills that were supposed to help him come to his senses. The gong was struck, and the fight match continued. The man noticed that his opponent looked different now. Jan rushed toward his opponent like a demon. The man tried to defend himself against his opponent's blows, noting how fast Jan had become. He was startled by Jan's sudden power, but because of that, he missed a direct hit with his opponent's fist right in his face. After that, Jan grabbed his opponent's face with his hand. In an instant, he had his opponent down in the ring. And then Jan, like a demon, began to furiously beat up his opponent, who was so defenseless. Some of the spectators present at the match were amazed by the terrifying power that emanated from Jan. Zhang Huizhong, sitting in the VIP box, was ecstatic. He was happy to once again demonstrate the power of the red pills. He then told a subordinate to send out a batch of red pills. He announced that the distribution of red pills would begin in the west of the city from today. However, his subordinate was discouraged, reminding his boss that the west of the city was Dasheng territory. The smiling Zhang Huizhong believed that everyone had their weaknesses, and that Qin Sheng was no exception. Meanwhile, one of the subordinates called his boss. He said that boss Qin Sheng was right and that it was indeed the red pills. The boxer had taken the red pills and as a result had won. The man speculated that there were suspicions that the match was a fake match. Qin Sheng calmly listened to his report, understood everything he told him. Qin Sheng then ended the call and looked at the night city from the window, noting how beautiful the night was tonight. At this moment, a subordinate came up to him and informed him that his father and sister were already waiting for him. Upon seeing his son, his father immediately inquired if his son had finished with his chores. Qin Sheng apologized, noting that he hadn't had time to deal with some things yet. His father assured him that he shouldn't worry so much, as they already have a lot of things to do. So the more burdened his son was, the more he could rest. He even laughed saying this. This man was Qin Dasheng, the founder of Dasheng Company and the chairman of Dasheng Company. Loosening the tie around his neck, Qin Sheng also mockingly admitted that his father was somehow too relaxed. His sister asked him not to break the comedy, as the whole family had arrived at the head office and he still had some unresolved business to attend to. This girl was Qin Xiaoyang, the second daughter of the Qin family and the president of Xiaoyang Company. Qin Sheng calmly stated that it was most convenient to work from the main office, so he decided to get down to business right away. He announced that he needed them to open a business on the west side of town for a while and move there. This announcement surprised his sister and father. The sister was enraged, completely unaware of what her brother was up to. She reminded him that her casino in the west side neighborhood had just been discovered, and he was demanding that she move back there so soon. Her father was also surprised, wondering if his son had really decided to go against the Zhang family. Qin Sheng evasively replied that he didn't intend to, but they should be ready to do what he asked. He said that red pills had appeared in the western region and that they knew nothing about it until they investigated. Xiaoyang had heard about the red pills that had become incredibly popular in the southern coast. She had also heard that red pills were very effective and powerful. Qin Sheng recalled, red pills are incredibly addictive. According to legend, red pills were born from the military psychotropic drug in Country H. They put a great strain on the brain, nerves and heart. Because of their powerful efficacy, people rushed to these pills in droves, sustaining a deadly addiction with profits as high as 600%. So it was a veritable goldmine for merchants. Qin Xiaoyang was incredibly shocked when she heard about the 600% profit. However, Qin Sheng reminded her that according to the law of the 26th district, there should be no pills, regardless of profit. The father decided that they could discuss the details after dinner, since tonight's beef was burning and needed to be chewed leisurely. The father was curious where his other son was and why he didn't come today. Qin Sheng then informed the father that his mother told him that Tian was not feeling well today, and he was resting. The father was surprised that his son didn't tell him anything about it. He wanted to know if his son was okay. However, the son reassured his father by pointing out that some young people don't change, and then asked that the father not to worry about his younger son. What will Qin Sheng do in such a situation, and what trump cards does Jiang Huaizhong have, and what will Xiaoxian manage to find out? What is Qin Tian up to? Meanwhile, in one of the nightclubs, Qin Tian was throwing objects at his minions. All the minions bowed their heads, feeling humiliated by him. He couldn't believe that Xiaoxian was able to beat them all up. Most of all, he was most enraged at Liu Lian. The guy didn't understand how such a huge Liu Lian couldn't crush some weakling. And instead of destroying the weakling, Liu Lian also shamefully appeared in a semblance of a collar. His anger was not only towards Liu Lian, but also towards the others. Qin Tian didn't understand at all how his minions couldn't defeat a weakling like Xiaoxian. He continued to insult them in every possible way, thinking that it was more profitable to keep a dog than all of them. At this moment, Jiang Huaizhong appeared. He asked why the guy was swearing. The man said that at this rate, Qin Tian would brick his entire club. He even wondered if Qin Tian was so dissatisfied with the service in the club. Qin Tian realized that Jiang Huaizhong had appeared in front of him, and the urge to shout immediately disappeared, and cold sweat broke out on his face. Jiang Huaizhong sat down next to him and put his arm around him. The man reminded him that he had known the guy since he was a baby, so he didn't have to address him as a mister. Qin Tian then addressed him as Brother Jiang. As an understanding brother, Jiang Huaizhong asked him to tell him what he had going on, that he was yelling at the other guys like that. Qin Tian frowned, but still decided to confess. He said that he had asked his subordinates to straighten out one weakling, but they failed. Therefore, he got angry and shouted so much. Good-natured Jiang Huaizhong assured the guy that there was nothing wrong with this situation. After all, if it didn't work the first time, it would work the second time. Besides, no matter how strong the guy was, he was clearly just an ordinary mortal man. After that, his subordinate turned on the recording on the monitor. He asked the guy to look at the screen. The man then briefly explained that an underground boxing match had been held today and that one of the participants had been killed. Qin Tian was shocked, unable to believe his eyes that a potential favorite in this confrontation was so easily beaten to death. Jiang Huaizhong calmly pointed out that it was true that the favorite had been beaten to death by some unknown boxer. Qin Tian still couldn't believe it, because the favorite in this fight was a demon in the flesh and was the first boxing champion from Country T. Then Jiang Huaizhong put a vial of 3 red pills on the table. He assured the guy that the impossible becomes possible, especially when one had the opportunity. Looking at the red pills, Qin Tian was even more shocked when he realized the situation that had happened in the ring. After a while, Xiaoxian went to study and walked around the campus. A girl walked past him, not realizing what kind of handsome guy had suddenly appeared. The second girl, seeing his sports uniform, also thought he was handsome, thinking that he was an athlete. However, the first girl couldn't believe it, because she knew all the athletes at the academy and thought they all looked like they had escaped from a zoo. The second girl was even more confused now, as she didn't understand where he had come from at the academy then. However, she had a feeling that she had seen him somewhere before. Xiaoxian noticed that some of the guys were watching him. A moment later, he was already surrounded by several guys who were not letting him pass quietly. At the head of the guys was Liu Lian, as always, and he looked incredibly formidable. Taking off his backpack from his shoulders, Xiaoxian admitted with a disgruntled look that he was even getting bored. He recalled that Liu Lian's neck seemed to have suffered a lot last time. Despite all of this, Liu Lian's face was filled with anger that even the veins on his forehead were clearly visible. He declared that Xiaoxian shouldn't even dare to laugh, because he was going to rip off all of his limbs today. The second girl noticed that Qin Tian's first 6 Qin Tian, Liu Lian, had appeared. The first girl heard Xiaoxian's name and suddenly remembered that Qin Tian had bullied him and even made him eat a cockroach burger. Xiaoxian cheekily inquired that didn't he tear Liu Lian off everything that was hanging badly from him last time. The guy was even surprised that Liu Lian had come for more today. He even started to scoff that Liu Lian seems to have strange hobbies and that Liu Lian likes to get beaten up. However, today, Liu Lian had threateningly declared that he would not leave the guy with a wet spot. The other guys all tried to attack Xiaoxian and beat him up. After ducking down a bit and getting into a stance, Xiaoxian noticed that the front and back paths of retreat were blocked, and such a small space was completely unsuitable for combat. Therefore, he swung his backpack, pushing everyone away. After that, breaking the glass, he escaped from the hallway by jumping through the window into the classroom. Liu Lian told the others to immediately chase after the guy and not let him escape. One of the guys ran in through the door, yelling for Shaoxian to stop running away from them. But Shaoxian, who was hiding right next to him, sprang out like a hunter sensing his prey and swung his right fist into the guy's face. The guy flew backwards, but was caught by another guy standing behind him. Shaoxian reacted instantly and punched the other guy in the eyes, eliminating the other guy as well. Two more guys entered the classroom next, but Shaoxian had already rushed towards them. He grabbed a brass knuckle from his backpack and placed it on his right hand. Quickly moving from one guy to the other, he deftly gave them just one blow each with his knuckle fist. One was hit in the stomach and the other in the face. At this moment, Liu Lian finally entered the classroom, who couldn't understand what had just happened at all and why his guys were lying on the floor. Not wanting Liu Lian to be on full alert, Shaoxian rushed towards him to get rid of him quickly. In the blink of an eye, he was right in front of Liu Lian, who still didn't react in any way. Then, with a powerful fist punch to Liu Lian's jaw, Shaoxian sent him lying on the floor. Standing beside him, Shaoxian wondered why they were causing trouble for him. The guy complained that he just wanted to study, draw, and enjoy a quiet life. And they just bullied him day in and day out, even though he had done nothing wrong to them. Shaoxian decided that it was now necessary to maintain an image of a strong person in front of the students to avoid trouble in the future. He even stated that he hoped that from this moment onwards, they would no longer attempt to engage in bullying him. However, at this moment, Liu Lian's face changed drastically. The veins on his face became highly visible, and his eyes began to take on a red hue. Liu Lian instantly got up from the floor and tried to pounce on the guy. Shaoxian was surprised at how fast Liu Lian was moving. He didn't have time to dodge the attack, but was only able to make a block with his hands. So Liu Lian's fist strike caught up with him. Looking at his opponent, Shaoxian couldn't understand how his opponent suddenly had such strength and agility. Looking at Liu Lian's creepy face, Shaoxian felt that he had some familiar feeling. Stepping on the other guys, Liu Lian was already rushing to attack the guy again. Dodging at the last moment, Shaoxian noticed that Liu Lian started with a straight punch with his right fist, just like last time. So now he thought Liu Lian was using a basic attack again, but at this moment, Liu Lian just used the same hand to use a swinging right punch. It took Shaoxian a split second to realize that Liu Lian had changed the punch, but he had no option to dodge. Shaoxian flew into the standing tables in the classroom from such a blow. He noticed that it had been a few days since the last clash with Liu Lian, so he didn't understand how Liu Lian was able to improve his skills in such a short time. He didn't even believe that such a thing was even possible. Liu Lian didn't leave him any time to think, as he was already beside him and swinging his arms. Shaoxian managed to bounce to the side, and the angry Liu Lian broke the table Shaoxian had just been near with his punch. Stretching his neck, Shaoxian even found time to rejoice that he was lucky and Liu Lian had miscalculated. After all, his new body had already developed resistance to the blows, but he still couldn't predict what would happen next. The veins on Liu Lian's face were getting bigger and bigger, and his eyes had long since turned completely red. Attacking the guy once again, he continued to laugh non-stop. Dodging his hand strikes once again, Shaoxian noticed that he had increased his speed again. Shaoxian now became more serious. He noticed that Liu Lian used the same technique, but became even faster. Realizing that there was definitely something wrong with the guy, he decided to end this confrontation as soon as possible. Dodging the blows once again, he struck Liu Lian in the face with his knuckle fist. However, this time, Liu Lian was not going to fall to the floor, but only laughed. Then, as he continued to laugh, he tried to hit the opponent in front of him with his knee. Shaoxian began to ponder the situation. He noticed that there was a red vapor around the guy and some acrid odor. However, because he was slightly distracted, he missed the kick to his side. The guy knew very well that Shaoxian's body was still too weak. In addition, strength, stamina, and reflexes would wane in moments of extreme exhaustion. Nevertheless, he could not understand why epiphanies could appear in an ordinary academy. Epiphanies, or moon goddess kisses, originated in H country as a secret injection for special operations. For a short period of time, moon goddess kisses enhanced physical characteristics and spurred one to fierce ones. After a person drank the pill, their eyes would take on an intimidating appearance, for which this state was nicknamed epiphany. Liu Lian continued to advance furiously, waving his arms. However, Shaoxian realized that he could not delay any longer. After all, the continuous intense lunges towards him had exhausted Shaoxian's body, so he could already feel that it was getting harder and harder to move. In addition to that, he had received a heavy blow from his opponent, so most likely his 2 or 3 ribs were broken. Therefore, if nothing changed, he would most likely die before his opponent had an epiphany. Problems only arose from the fact that he had to hurry. At times, he completely forgot that he no longer had a trained body like before, so he would need to start training as soon as possible. Despite all of his earlier thoughts, Shaoxian did not despair. After all, he was lucky. He realized that in this world, no one but him knew the weaknesses of the Epiphany injection. The improved efficiency of combat abilities was the advantage of Epiphany, but at the same time, it was also its disadvantage. Dodging the guy's blows, Shaoxian went on the offensive himself. He knew that Epiphany raised the body's pain threshold, which was why it was so powerful in battle, and helped him get rid of his fear of the enemy. Liu Lian continued to furiously swing his arms to overpower Shaoxian. Except Shaoxian had a realization that as time passed, Liu Lian's sense of pain would only increase until it disappeared. After that, one would lose their sense of self-preservation, which was the most important aspect of the fight. The goal of the fight was to win, using all means to kill the opponent while preserving one's own life. Shaoxian once again rushed into the fight and even flew in the air. Many students were watching this fight and were shocked by his movements. However, he didn't notice them, trying to execute his plan first. After all, he needed to hit the back of his opponent's heart. After all, through such a move, it was possible to provoke the opponent's heart to stop. After such a strike, Liu Lian kneeled down and then fell to the floor. The guy's face was covered in cold sweat, but no matter what, he was glad. He was glad that his plan had worked, but at the same time, he had exhausted all his strength. At this moment, the exhausted guy started to fall to the floor, trying to realize how long his confrontation with Liu Lian had lasted. All he could feel now was that he really wanted to sleep. How will this guy's adventure end, and won't the other guys beat him up while he's unconscious? In his past life, Mu Ye had fought people who were under the influence of Epiphany or Moon Goddess Kiss. When he encountered such warriors, he thought they were horrible people. When fighting him, these people didn't even realize that they were incredibly exhausted. It was as if pain didn't exist for them, and they threw themselves into battle again and again, completely ignoring the injuries they had sustained. He even felt as if he were fighting robots instead of humans. Then the man did not understand why people behaved like that. But at that moment, Tommy appeared and eliminated the person Mu Ye was fighting with. After helping Mu Ye up, Tommy asked if Mu Ye was okay. Mu Ye informed him that there was something wrong with their opponents and that they were much stronger than last time. Tommy asked if Mu Ye had dealt with the moondogs that had eaten Epiphany. That was when Mu Ye first heard of Epiphany. Tommy told him that the enemy had recently developed a psychotropic drug that allowed the user to utilize energy beyond what was humanly acceptable. Tommy felt that this could be the last straw. However, he was not allowed to finish, and Tommy was attacked from the back. The guy attacked him from behind. The guy had a big scar on the left side of his face and a ring on his right hand. At the same instant, Shaoxian woke up abruptly. He still couldn't tell if it was a dream. Just at that moment, he heard his parents arguing with the academy administration. His father didn't understand at all why the academy principal was asking them not to make a big deal out of it. His father didn't understand why his son was the victim in this situation, and they should be the ones not to make a big deal out of it. Mother also felt that she would not let the whole situation go quiet. She demanded that all those responsible come out and apologize for bullying her son. The woman was not going to allow anyone to let the matter be hushed up. However, the man asked them to calm down. He reported that they had already dealt with the guys who were involved in the incident. He even dared to state that they had regarded their actions as an explanation to the Huang student. Finally, the academy principal entered the conversation. He announced that if they continued to scandalize further, it would not do them or their son any good. The principal pointed out that there were 2 types of students in Mountain Hawk Academy, those with excellent grades and those with powerful parents. The mother was amazed at the principal's insolence. She had seen no explanation from the principal as to why her son was being bullied by other students at the academy. The mother was outraged that her son was allowed to be bullied by other students just because their family wasn't high enough. She admitted that she had seen their son come home covered in bruises and abrasions, but he attributed it to military training. The mother understood that her son kept quiet about the bullying at the academy because he didn't want to upset his parents. The principal again asked them to calm down. Fixing his glasses on his face, he said that he understood the current situation and that their academy had some responsibility. On behalf of the institution, the principal decided to give his word that no one would ever bother student Huang again. He even stated that if necessary, they could make an exception for Huang Xiaoxian and transfer him to the Mountain Hawk Academy's District 1 building. Even the man beside the principal was surprised by his words. In addition, the principal promised that after Huang Xiaoxian graduated, they would give him a position in a subsidiary of Yingshan Group without entrance exams. He asked how they felt about such an offer. However, Huang Xiaoxian's parents did not particularly like this initiative of the principal. His father simply exploded after their suggestion. He started pointing his finger in their direction, stating that they should solve the root of the problem. They didn't need explanations and such apologies from the culprit. The mother was also outraged, believing that they were completely ignorant of the psychological trauma their son had suffered. After thinking for a bit, the principal announced that they would apologize after the Huang Xiaoxian student woke up. No matter what, the parents felt that not only the principal, but also the students who bullied their son had a duty to apologize publicly. At this moment, Xiaoxian decided to intervene in the conversation. Rising slightly on the bed, he called out to his parents. Xiaoxian admitted that the other guys started first, but got more serious injuries than him. Therefore, he suggested that his parents do as the academy suggested. However, his parents felt that this was not the way to go. They were obviously worried that their son once again did not want to give his parents any trouble, and therefore agreed to the academy's suggestion. Xiaoxian explained that the academy had given their word that Liu Lian and the other students would be severely punished, so he didn't need anything else. He noted that he just wanted to enjoy student life now, not to increase the hatred towards himself. After all, otherwise the whole situation that had arisen would never end. Even after listening to his wishes, his parents were still against it. But the son asked his parents to end the conversation there. They wanted to continue the conversation, but at that moment a doctor appeared and started shouting at them that a hospital room is not a market to shout like that here. She said that the patient was very weak and needed rest, so she told everyone to leave the room and slammed the door in front of their noses. Looking at Xiaoxian, the doctor suddenly closed the door. After a moment, the guy asked her to stop pretending since everyone had already left. And then he called her by her name, Mona, which surprised the girl a lot. The girl complimented him on his attentiveness. She asked him if he liked her new image. In the back of his mind, the guy admitted that he wouldn't have recognized that Mona was in front of him if her hadn't changed his voice and intonation on purpose. He wondered why she had suddenly come to see him. Fixing her glasses, the girl said that she hadn't seen him for a week, and he was so cold to her. However, she then started to open the door of the room, stating that she did not come to see him alone today. She then asked her boss to enter the room. Qin Sheng immediately entered the room and praised her for her skills. Xiaoxian instantly realized that Qin Sheng had appeared in front of him. He didn't expect to meet him so early at all. Taking a seat on the chair in front of the guy, Qin Sheng said hello to him, informing him that this was their first time meeting, that his name was Qin Sheng, and that he was Qin Tian's older brother. Looking at the smiling Mona, the guy thought that he would need to pull out more information about Mona since she was working for Qin Sheng, since he still didn't know anything about her identity. Qin Sheng pointed out that he had already heard about the relationship between his brother and Xiaoxian, so he personally came only because of the problem that had arisen. He handed the guy a plastic card, saying that it was a personal account he had opened for Xiaoxian, and that there was 100,000 in that account. He stated that it was his personal compensation for the guy. Qin Sheng hoped that this would be the end of the relationship between his brother and Xiaoxian finally. He assured that in the future, his brother would not bother the guy again, and the guy would have to forget about all the grudges. Xiaoxian looked at him coldly, realizing why Qin Sheng had appeared in the first place. Not the least bit afraid of Qin Sheng, the guy wondered what would happen if he didn't accept such compensation. However, Qin Sheng believed that such an outcome was impossible. He stated that he had forbidden his brother from leaving the house and that he would send his brother abroad in 3 months. He then handed Mona a plastic card, informing the guy that Mona would give him the password to his bank account after he left. However, upon hearing his offer, Xiaoxian only smiled. He stated that even if Qin Sheng paid a high price for his silence, the hatred in his heart would remain. Standing up from his chair and adjusting his tie, Qin Sheng noted that he had heard that the guy had some tricks up his sleeve, but he earnestly requested that the guy not try to get smart in front of him, and also that if he didn't want to think about himself, he should think about his family first. Xiaoxian felt threatened by Qin Sheng towards his family. In his thoughts, he asked that Qin Sheng not to worry, for he would definitely protect his family. No matter what, he was not going to let Qin Tian go so easily without punishing him at all before doing so. Qin Sheng turned around and headed towards the exit of the room, noting that he had said everything he wanted to say and then said goodbye to the guy. Lastly, he asked Mona to take care of the Huang Xiaoxian student. Mona accepted his order. When the door to the room closed, she wished Qin Sheng a good journey. Then, with a smile and a creepy laugh, she turned to the guy and snapped the door shut. Taking off her doctor's robe, she declared that they were now alone. The girl thought it was time for him to pay his bills. However, the guy stopped her from thinking further. He informed her that she could leave bank card and the password to it and just leave. The guy even promised that he would not tell anyone about the incident. He inquired what she thought about his suggestion. Mona decided to show surprise. After all, they had worked so hard to earn money for their honeymoon, and all the guy wants from her is a bank card. She even considered him a heartless rascal. She remembered that the guy's medical examination report had stated that his muscles were badly damaged and that he needed someone who could take care of him. The girl was already kneading her hands with a smile, asking the guy to be obedient and let her give him a good beating. The guy then inquired what she thought about him giving her 10,000. Adjusting her glasses, Mona allowed herself to think about his offer. Stepping on his bed with her left foot, the girl noticed that the guy seemed to be up to something sinister again. It even surprised her that the guy thought she would insult her boss for only 10,000. However, the guy pointed out that no one hates money, so it was hard for him to answer her question. He even wondered if he had offered her too small an amount. The guy looked her in the eye and smiled, and then informed her that he wanted to make a deal with her. He promised that if she complied with his request, he would give her all the money on the bank card that Qin Sheng had given him as compensation. The girl was surprised by such a sudden offer from the guy. However, after a moment she smiled after saying that she was willing to listen to his offer. I never understood why his family is considered low class here. His family doesn't have a personal chef or anything, or a golden toilet, but his parents are at least middle class. He doesn't starve, big house. Mother buys the latest model cell phone that was limited in sale, and so on. Of course, you could say he lives in an academy dorm and not in a separate apartment or house. But there's also literally Qin Tian living in the same dorm, whose family is much richer than the guy, so it's just academy rules. To summarize, the issue of their low status seems strange to me. Although maybe there was a comparison between his family and Qin's family, but Qin Tian himself was not directly involved in the last incident. Where will the plot go from here? The end of today was marked by sunset. Xiaoxian once again trained hard. Finally, Xiaoxian finished his training for today. He had changed a lot recently and had gotten his body into shape. Mona, who was watching him, thought that the guy had already been training hard for 2.5 months and had achieved a good result. She originally thought that the guy would retract his words on the first day. 2.5 months ago, Xiaoxian offered Mona a deal. He offered her a deal where she would be his personal instructor for 3 months, and for that she would receive 100,000 yuan. The girl was surprised that he was asking her to be his personal instructor. Xiaoxian explained that he was asking for her to help him master the special training according to the specification of the special forces. However, he also noted that there was an additional condition. Except for the training, his personal life would remain just for him and she could not restrict him. Mona only smiled, noting that she would not believe his words so easily. She wondered what if the guy decided to meet with Qin Tian to discuss their unfinished business. She was extremely reluctant to lose her job because of the guy's shenanigans. Shaoxian assured her that he knew how to solve her issue. He stated that he would simply give her a pledge of allegiance, and then asked her to scan the QR code on his phone. As she took her phone and scanned the QR code from his phone, she wondered about his so-called oath. The guy thought that only in this way the girl could be calm. A moment later, she was stunned when she looked at the screen of her phone. She was surprised that the guy had slandered himself. As soon as the girl scanned the QR code, then she was added to the chat room. In this chat, the guy sent a message. At the right moment, just tell the police that Qin Tian hired people to beat me up. The guy told her to accept payment from him and then reply in the chat, "Let's do as you said and part ways." The girl wondered if the guy was afraid she would just run away with the money. However, Shaoxian reminded her that Qin Sheng had said that the bank account had been opened in his name. Therefore, if the amount is more than 100,000 yuan, the girl won't be able to withdraw the money without him. Bringing her thoughts back to the present events, the girl wondered what the guy was really up to. She even thought that he was trying to take the initiative. Getting up from her seat and heading towards him, the girl realized that the guy in front of her didn't seem like a no-brainer, so she was interested in what his plan was. As she approached him, he inquired if they were done for the day. He admitted that he wanted another workout since he wasn't happy with his current reflexes. She was outraged that he chose to tell her how to train him. After all, she was his instructor. Mona felt that specialized training should be learned gradually. Besides, she noted that the guy already had a higher training intensity than the regular military. The girl thought that tolerating the pain of tearing muscles was possible, but the injuries and damage to the body were real. She recalled that there was a common idiom in the East, "Temper your pride." However, the guy told her to stop talking nonsense, as he knew his body very well, so he wanted to continue practicing. Mona looked at him intently and noticed his persistence. The girl thought he was too cocky. She began to tie her hair into a ponytail, noting that the guy was only talkative and too stubborn. Mona also added that there is an old saying that describes people like him: "Don't put the cart before the horse." With that, she rushed into action, intending to teach the insolent guy a lesson. Shaoxian deftly dodged her blow and moved to the left. A smile appeared on Mona's face as she noticed how well the guy was doing in training. However, she wasn't going to spare him, for she had her pride too. While dodging her attacks, the guy also noticed that the power and speed of Mona's attacks were getting bigger and faster each time. He was well aware that there was still a gap between his physical fitness and Mona's physical fitness. Therefore, he felt that he had to outsmart her. He had learned one valuable lesson from his past life, that there was only one way to defeat your opponent when you could barely stand on your feet. He then grabbed Mona's leg as she attacked him. The girl was surprised by his behavior, wondering when he had time to master fighting in a horizontal position. However, her reacted quickly, twisted around and made a grab, straddling his head. Shaoxian noticed for the umpteenth time how incredibly fast the girl's reaction speed was. In an instant, she had her hands on his head. Shaoxian was thinking that in order to get out of this kind of hold, he would have to get free and get on top of her, but that was not so easy to do. Watching him, the girl marveled, wondering how many more tricks he had up his sleeve. She remembered that last time the guy had used a kickboxing and Jeet Kune Do technique and freestyle wrestling. She wondered what the guy would do next. She even stated that she was trembling with anticipation. Now she was wondering who taught the guy such fighting techniques. She even thought that he had stolen some secret martial arts book. The girl pointed out that the guy was like the protagonist of some manga. Then Mona looked at him closely, wondering if he had moved into another body or if he had become possessed by some old master or something. At this important moment for the plot, someone called the guy's cell phone. The girl continued to hold his head in the grip of her hands. She wondered if he would answer the call. The guy informed her that he would. She then released him. As he kneaded his neck and headed for his phone, Mona yelled that she had won this time, but he asked her not to dream about it. Shaoxian answered the call that came to his phone. However, he was extremely surprised by the caller's voice and his insults. After 2.5 months, the almighty Qin Tian decided to call him. Shaoxian was actually glad to hear from him. He wondered if before hiding in Country B, Qin Tian wanted to give him a whipping. The guy even called Qin Tian a loser. Xiaoxian was already starting to worry that he wouldn't be able to find him, but Qin Tian turned out to be determined to find him himself. Qin Tian was infuriated by the guy's words. He started insulting the guy and saying that the guy definitely thought too much of himself. Qin Tian told Xiaoxian not to think that he was strong just because he was able to defeat Liu Lian. He thought that Xiaoxian was just a dog that could attack stealthily. Xiaoxian was amused by the way Qin Tian was infuriated by his helplessness. Qin Tian started shouting that he could beat 10 people like Xiaoxian with one left. He even promised that Xiaoxian would beg for forgiveness on his knees. However, Xiaoxian only began to irritate him. He stated that was Qin Tian willing to do all this to him just over the phone. Mona tried to eavesdrop on who the guy was talking to on the phone. Watching from the window of the house as his brother got into the car, Qin Tian stated that he would easily kick Xiaoxian's ass. Qin Tian is so hopeless that his brother, with all his problems, has to deal with a problematic pain in the ass in the form of him. Qin Tian announced that they could meet at 10 o'clock today at Hongsan Port. He was incredibly angry, but added that it was just the two of them and no one else. Xiaoxian was excited about this possibility, so immediately agreed to his proposal. He was incredibly happy that it was finally time to deal with Huang Xiaoxian's problems and put an end to the clashes with the rabid dog. At this moment, he also received a call on his phone from his father. Xiaoxian was surprised to receive a call from his father. When he answered the call, his father wondered why his son wasn't home yet, since it was so late. Xiaoxian tried to justify himself by saying that he had something to do and that they could have dinner without him. However, his father yelled at him that he was overreacting. Xiaoxian did not understand at all why his father was reacting like that. Mona, on the other hand, once again tried to eavesdrop on who the guy was talking to on the phone and what the conversation was about. The father was angry, noting that his son left early in the morning every day and returned only late at night. So the father wondered what his son was actually doing all this time. He even stated that if the guy didn't leave dirty clothes, he would have already decided that his son was dead. He menacingly inquired if his son had a conscience. Mona was still trying to make out who the guy was talking to. Xiaoxian tried to tell his father that he really had important things to do today. However, his father told him to go home immediately and that their conversation was over, and then ended the call. Mona finally realized that Xiaoxian was talking to his father. Xiaoxian regretted that he didn't have a good relationship with them because they weren't his real parents. Besides, he was actually going to take revenge on those bastards who had done terrible things to their real son. Mona approached him, noticing that his parents had apparently just given him a stern talking to. The guy pointed out, however, that it was uncivilized to eavesdrop on other people's conversations. Mona smiled, noting how generous she was, since his parents are very worried, so she wouldn't take today as a training day. However, grabbing her head with his left hand, Xiaoxian asked her not to talk nonsense because there were only 15 days left. The girl asked him not to put pressure on her head. She also placed her left hand on his head, noting that he was a mischievous boy who still had plenty of time. Therefore, she felt that it shouldn't be hard for him to spend at least one day with his family. But the guy pointed out that she shouldn't care. The girl asked him to be honest with his parents. She told him to stop keeping everything to himself and putting on a mask of indifference. The girl even noticed that he was acting like an old man. Mona told him to let her go so he wouldn't wipe off all her makeup. The girl thought about how his parents had given him life and that he should learn to appreciate life and his parents before he lost it all. However, the guy pointed out to her that she liked to pry too much. After a while, Xiaoxian arrived home. His mother greeted him cheerfully, telling him that he was on time because she had just set the table. As he walked into the house, he noticed that it was now 7 o'clock and 28 minutes, which meant he still had until 10 o'clock. The guy was happily surprised to see that they were having Shazhou cuisine today. Mother happily noted that her husband had said their son would be here for dinner tonight, so she decided to make her son's favorite dish. The guy was overjoyed and didn't know what to say, as his drool was flowing in rivers. He wished everyone a pleasant appetite and reached for the food when suddenly his father slapped him on the arm. The father angrily inquired what his son was doing now. He did not understand why his son was touching the food, even though he had not even washed his hands. The father thought he should remind his son of the basic rules of table etiquette. Xiaoxian agreed with the father. He was surprised that his father had such a bad temper, since he had never noticed it before. He wondered why his father was suddenly behaving like this. His mother was also surprised, thinking that his son had simply forgotten to wash his hands and that there was nothing wrong with it. She pointed out that they rarely ate together anyway. The guy did not understand what the father was trying to accomplish, but he had a bad feeling. The father stated that he was to blame for his son's poor upbringing. The mother also wondered why his father was acting this way. Why does the father actually behave like this? Would Xiaoxian make it to the meeting with Qin Tian on time, or would he have other plans? And that's all for today. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you would like to see a sequel, please like, subscribe to the channel, and leave your wishes in the comments. You can also subscribe to Telegram to know about new videos. Bye everybody.